All righty. Welcome to Documents and Drafts, the podcast where we take a look at important historical documents, especially important to the United States, and drink some really cool beers along the way. We are going to look at the background of each document, look at the background of the beer. We'll talk about the document, talk about the beer, maybe do a couple other cool things along the way. So I appreciate you being here today. It's a little funky, as you can tell, with the computer screen. Today we are going to read Hasty Pudding by John Barlow and Susanna Howson Roll called Charlotte Temple. We'll do a little bit of that. We're going to talk about some Guinness because that's what we're drinking today. Guinness out of a bottle. Normally I drink Guinness off a tap. I don't have a tap at home. So we're going to do that. We're also going to talk about the history of St. Patrick because that's tomorrow. And can you see my shirt? I don't know if you can see my shirt. There you go. Irish national team shirt from a couple years ago. Soccer. What else is there? All right. Okay, so here we go. Let's pull up some of the share stuff if I can find it. Where is it? From St. Patrick's Day, but where's the other thing? All right, give me a second. Isn't this fun? Make it smaller that way. There we go. Make that smaller. Make that smaller. We can move this around a little bit, maybe. Nope, I can't. Yes, I can. That's what we need. Crazy day today, trying to get organized here. There we go. Jesus, took me long enough. All right, so again, welcome to Documents and Drafts, the podcast. We already talked about that. We're going to use the following book, Our Nation's Archives, The History of the United States in Documents, edited by Eric Grun and Jay Crosby. We are going to drink some Guinness, which I already showed you. We're going to talk about St. Patrick's Day. And those are my thank yous, and I'll get to those at the end. Okay. So the first thing that we are going to read from our book, is Hasty Pudding by John Barlow. Okay. So John Barlow, let's make this. So we'll just share the screen. That's the easiest way to do it. Where did it go? I apologize. Today's been kind of wacky. Not working the way I want it to work. Why isn't it showing this when I want it to? Sorry, you're gonna have to look at my ugly mug. There we go. That's what I was trying to do. All right, Hasty Pudding. Here's the background. John Barlow's mock heroic poem from 1793, The Hasty Pudding, celebrated the simple values of America. The sentiments of the poem were triggered when the writer gets a whiff of cornmeal in a Swiss Alpine inn, reminding the author of his native hasty pudding. In mocking and sentimental verses, below punctured Europeans' pretension in favor of ordinary American ways. Here we go. Dear hasty pudding, what unpromised joy expand my heart to meet thee in Savoy, doomed over the world through devious paths to roam. Each climate is my country, and each house is my home. My soul is soothed, my cares have found an end. I greet my long lost, unforgotten friend. For thee, though through Paris, that corrupted town, how long in vain I wandered up and down, where shameless Bacchus with his drenching horde, cold from his cave, usurps the morning board. London has lost his smoke and steeped in tea. No Yankee there can lisp the name of thee. The uncouth word, a libel on the town, would call a proclamation from the crown. For climes oblique that fear the sun's full rays, chilled in their fogs, exclude the generous maize. A grain whose rich, luxuriant growth requires short, gentle showers and bright, ethereal fires. But here, though distant from our native shore, with mutual glee we meet and laugh once more. The same, I know thee by that yellow face, that strong complexion of true Indian race, which time can never change, nor soil impair, nor in alpine snows, nor turkey or morbid air. For endless years, though every mild domain which grows the maize, there art sure to reign. But man more fickle, the bold incense claims, a different realm to give thee different names. Thee to soft nations round the warm Levant, polenta call the French, of course, polenta. Even that in thy native regions, how I blush to hear the Pennsylvanians call thee mush. On Hudson's bank, while men of Belgic spawn, insult and eat thee by name supine. All spurious appellations void of truth, I've been known there from my earliest youth. The name is hasty pudding. Thus our sires, we won't agree, they fuming from their fires. And while they argued in thy just defense, with logic clear, they thus explained the sense. In haste, boiling cauldron over the blaze receives and cooks the ready powered maize. In haste till served, and then in equal haste, with cooling milk, we make the sweet repaste. No carving to be done, no knife to grate the tender ear and wound the stony plate, but the smooth spoon just fitting to the lip, and taught with art the yielding mass to dip. By frequent journeys to the bowls well stored, performs the hasty honors of the board. Such is thy name, significant and clear, a name of sound to every Yankee dear. But most to me, whose heart and palate chaste, preserve my pure hereditary taste. My song, resounding in its grateful glee, no merit claim, I praise myself to thee. My father loved thee through his length of days, for thee his field were shaded o'er with maize. From thee what health, what vigor he possessed, 10 sturdy freemen, from his loin attest. Thy constellation ruled my natal morn, and all my bones were made of Indian corn. Delicious grain, whatever form it take, to roast or boil, to smooth or bake. In every dish 'tis welcome to still to me, but most my hasting pudding, most in thee. So there's hasty pudding. I'll have a little Guinness. It's good, but it's not as good as draft. So let's we go. Let's get rid of that. Make this bigger. Let's go to the share screen. Why doesn't it? There it goes. St. Patrick's Day. Let's look up Guinness. Here's Guinness. Let's see what we can find. This is from Guinness's website. See if I can find a about. Ah, not what I wanted. It's also not what I wanted. My apologies. For some reason, I'm having a tough day today. Here, the story of Guinness. That's what I wanted. It takes a thirst for adventure to do things again this way. From our humble beginnings in 1759 to the present day, we've gone to extraordinary lengths to bring you exceptional beer, but we're not one to rest on our laurels. As we like to put it, our greatest work is yet to come. At this stage, you'll be forgiven for thinking the story of Arthur Guinness was a myth, but he was very real, and every pint served around the world is one more pint of his undeniable legacy. Arthur Guinness was the first in a long line of Guinness master brewers, and the craft of brewing at St. James Gate Brewery, great tour by the way, was handed down from generation to generation. Arthur himself most likely developed his passion for brewing from his father, Richard, who was said to be in charge of brewing in the Selbridge estate of Dr. Arthur Price, later Archbishop of Cashel. On the 31st of December 1759, the man signed a 9,000-year lease on St. James's Gate brewery in Dublin. If that's not belief, we don't know what is. And now we can see that his belief was a vision he saw before any of us were even born. His entrepreneurial spirit was on another level. Guinness was a philanthropist, a pragmatist, an innovator, a family man, and a fighter. The terms of the lease granted to him a use of limited supply of water, and when Dublin Corporation tried to cut off the supply due to overuse, it's written that Mr. Guinness violently rushed upon them, wrenching a pickaxe from one and declaring the very much improper language that they should not proceed. You see, signing the lease was one thing, holding on to it was another thing altogether, and Arthur was not about to let go during his lifetime. So the journey continued. More beer was brewed, more jobs created, and more taste buds tantalized. Sláinte Arthur to the lease of life. And of course, this is the harp is very Irish. So we're not going to read through all this because it's way too much. So again, I'm having a Guinness. It's excellent. It's always better on draft. If you can get it on draft, it's always better on draft. Again, here's some Guinness. Let's go back to let's share screen, maybe. Nobody needs to see my own book all the time. Okay, so we're going to read a little bit more of today. There we go. This is the second piece from, it's called Charlotte Temple. Again, we're using Our Nation's Archives, the History of the United States and Documents, edited by Eric Brunn and Jay Crosby. And check on our time. Oh, doing good. Okay. All the music again is provided by Soundstripe. Okay, here we go. This is the background. First published in the United States in 1793, Susan Haswell Rawson's Charlotte Temple was America's best-selling book until the publication of Uncle Tom's Cabin 60 years later. Rawson's novel told the tale of a young woman who fell in love with a man and was betrayed by him. The book was one of several popular novels in the women's fiction genre that attracted large audiences. The following excerpt is from the book's preface. All right, so here it is. For the perusal of the young and thoughtless of the fair sex, this tale of truth is designed, and I can well wish my fair readers to consider it as not merely the effusion of fancy, but a reality. The circumstances on which I have founded this novel were related to me some little time since by an old lady who has personally known Charlotte, though she concealed the real name of the characters, and likewise the place where the unfortunate scenes were acted. Yet as it was impossible to offer a relation to the public in such an imperfect state, I have thrown over the while a slight veil of fiction and substituted the names and places according to my own fancy. The principal characters in this little tale are now consigned to the silent tomb. It can therefore hurt the feelings of no one, and may, I flatter myself, be of some service to some who are so unfortunate to have neither friends or advisers to understanding that to direct them. Though the various and unexpected evils that attend a young and unprotected woman in her first entrance into life. While the tear of compassion still trembles in my eye from the fate of unhappy Charlotte, I may have children of my own, said I, to whom this reci recital may be of use. And if to your own children, said benevolence, why not the many daughters of misfortune who, deprived of natural friends or spoiled by mistaken education, are thrown onto the unfeeling world without the least power to defend themselves from the snares not only of the other sex, but from more dangerous arts of the profligate of their own. Since sensible as I am that a novel writer at the time when such a variety of works are ushered into the world under that name stand but a poor chance for fame in the annals of literature, but conscious that I, with the mind anxious for happiness of the sex whose morals and conduct have so powerful an influence on mankind in general, and convinced that I have not wrote a line that converses a wrong idea to the head or the corrupt wish to the heart, I shall rest satisfied in the purity of mine own intentions, and I merit not applause. I feel that I dread not censure. If the following tale should save one hapless fair from the error which ruined poor Charlotte, or rescue from impending misery the heart of one anxious parent, I shall feel a much higher gratification in reflecting on this trifling performance than could possibly result from the applause which might attend to the most elegant finished piece of literature whose tendency might deprave the heart or mislead the understanding. So that is Charlotte Temple by Susanna Haswell Rawson probably. Um, Again, the music's provided by Soundstripe. There we go. And so the two things we've written today, The Hasty Pudding by Joel Barlow and Charlotte Temple by Susanna Haswell Rawson, all from our book, Our Nation's Archives, History of the United States in Documents. We are drinking some Guinness in honor of St. Patrick's Day, which is tomorrow. And now let's look at our history of St. Patrick. If I can get it where I want, share screen. All right, this is from Encyclopedia Britannica. That way you can see my beautiful mug while I'm reading. St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day is a holiday honoring St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland. It is held annually on March 17th, which is St. Patrick's Feast Day. Originally observed with religious services and feasts, the day was later transformed by immigrants, particularly to the United States, into a largely secular holiday that celebrates all things Irish. Well, who was St. Patrick? Well, born in Roman Britain in the late 4th century, he was kidnapped at the age 16 and taken to Ireland as an enslaved person. He escaped but returned about 432 to convert the Irish to Christianity. By the time of his death on March 17, 1461, he had established monasteries, churches, and schools. Many legends grew up around him, for example, that he drove the snakes out of Ireland and used the shamrock to explain the Trinity. It was immigrants, particularly to the United States, who transformed St. Patrick's Day into a largely secular holiday of revelry and celebration of all things Irish. Cities with large numbers of Irish immigrants, who often wielded political power, staged the most extensive celebrations, which included elaborate parades. Boston held its first St. Patrick's Day parade in 1737, followed by New York City in 1762. Since 1962, Chicago has colored its river green to mark the holiday. Although blue was the color traditionally associated with St. Patrick, green is now commonly connected with the day. Irish and non-Irish alike commonly participate in the wearing of the green, spotting an item of green, clothing, or shamrock, the Irish national plant, on your lapel. Corned beef and cabbage are associated with the holiday, and even beer is sometimes dyed green. Why ruin beer with green? Just makes it flat to celebrate the day. Although some of these practices eventually were adopted by the Irish themselves, they did so largely to benefit tourists. Why is St. Patrick's Day celebrated on March 17th? St. Patrick's Day is celebrated on March 17th because, according to legend, it marks the death of St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland. Patrick, again, originally from Roman Britain, was kidnapped and enslaved and brought to Ireland at the age of 16. I already read that. After escaping his way back to Britain, he returned to Ireland around 432 to spread Christianity. His efforts led to the establishment of numerous monasteries, churches, and schools across Ireland. While the exact date of his death is known, by the time he died, perhaps in 461, he had significantly influenced the religious landscape of the country. And again, initially, St. Patrick's Day was a religious feast day in Ireland, marked by church services and feasts. In Ireland, let's go back a little bit because I don't want to repeat myself over and over. In Ireland, St. Patrick's Day remains a more religious occasion, often observed with prayers for peace. However, the secular aspect of the parades have been adopted in Ireland as well, largely to attract tourists. It has become a global celebration of Irish culture, with people of all backgrounds participating in the festivities. And we're not going to talk about Ireland's geography, even though it's absolutely gorgeous. Most of the Republic of Ireland is Catholic, which was St. Patrick was. All right, so that's the history of St. Patrick's Day, which is tomorrow. So hope you enjoy it. Get rid of this. And we closed our sharing screen. We're going to have to get back to that in a minute. Okay, where are we time-wise? 21 minutes. Oh, we're going to read one more doc. We are going to read one more document today because we have time. And I like to get to at least 30 minutes. We are drinking Guinness. So we're going to read about the Whiskey Rebellion. Okay. In 1791, the federal government created an excise tax on distilled spirits and stills. The levy fell particularly hard on farmers in western Pennsylvania and Virginia who converted their corn crops into whiskey because of the high cost to transport corn to eastern markets. Often unable to pay the excise tax because of a shortage of currency in the local economies, which often relies heavily on bartering, became known as the Whiskey Rebellion of 1794. Washington sent troops to compel the payment of taxes. William Finley, a county Democrat, wrote the account on the farmers' plight 2 years after the rebellion, which only had sporadic bouts of violence. So here's a little history. If the numerous difficulties encountered and hardships sustained by the people inhabiting the western counties of Pennsylvania were to be minutely related, their behavior under them fairly stated, their conduct generally would be entitled to a much greater proportion of approbation than blame, and their sufferings would have a powerful claim on the sympathy of their fellow citizens. The people in the western counties anticipate their experiencing peculiar hardships from the excise, without money or the means of procuring it, and consuming their whiskey only in their families or using it as an article of barter, which, though in it some respects answered the place of money, yet would not be received and pay for the excise tax. They thought it had it hard to pay as much tax on what they sold with them, but from 2 shillings to 2 shillings and sixpence. And they did where it brought double the price. These and such arguments were not new. I found them in use against the state excise when I went to reside in that county. They arose from their situation, and the simplest person, feeling their force, know how to use them. Some talked of laying aside their still altogether, till they would have their time to observe the effects of the law on other places, and have time to reflect on the subject, and on this method was advised in preference to a more violent mode of opposition by some who were apprehensive of outrages being committed. But though several peaceable men laid aside their stills or sold them, Yet there never was any association or resolutions among the inhabitants to that purpose. The great error among the people was an opinion that an immortal law might be opposed, and yet the government respected and all other laws obeyed. And they firmly believed that the excise law was an immoral one. This theory became with many a religious principle in defense of what they reasoned was considerable dress, in endeavoring to restore order and submission to laws. The most arduous talk with people otherwise of good morals was to convince them of the error of this principle. And no riots that I know of were attempted in this country where I reside, or by the people of it previous to the insurrection. And as I had never heard of any purpose threatened or any kind of opposition than laying at their stills, I consequently knew nothing of the principle being entertained till the insurrection took place. But then I found it to be of the greatest obstacles to the people, even of good understanding, signing such assurances as might imply an approbation of the law. Indeed, I despair that people residing in the situation where excises, applying directly to agriculture, demand two or three times the quantum of tax in proportion to the price in the market for the produce of their farm. That the farmers in more favorable situations have to pay can ever be brought to approve of such law by any methods in the power of government. Their objections are obvious and easily comprehended, and address themselves powerfully to their interest, whereas the arguments arising from the unequal pressure of imposts on the inhabitants of towns and people generally, whose manufacture little themselves, excuse me, and consequently consume much of foreign manufacture or luxuries not coming under the observation, are not understood nor admitted in abatement of their own complaints. Consequently, the citizens in situations remote from markets are advocates for direct taxes. Proportion to the value of property always pays them without complaints. To explain the operation of other taxes, which tend to an abatement of the pressure of the excise tax, and the inequality which would arise from apportioning direct taxes according to the constitutional rule, was the great object of those who endeavored to reconcile the people to the excise law. There were circumstances, however, which could be accommodated to the principle of justice. They were balanced with political consideration. There's a little bit about the Whiskey Rebellion. All right, we're going to wrap up today. So again, I hope you enjoyed Documents and Drafts. We read The Hasty Pudding. We read Charlotte Temple. We read a little history on the Whiskey Rebellion. From the book Our Nation's Archives, A History of the United States in Documents. We drank some Guinness in my Irish soccer jersey. So happy St. Patrick's Day. Thanks to the podcast is available on Spreaker.com, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Podcast Addict, and other platforms. The music's provided by Soundstripe. The book used Our Nation's Archives, edited by Eric Brun and Jay Crosby. Sometimes we use 50 Core Documents by the Ashbrook Press. I don't know why it still says Declaration of Independence, because that's not there anymore. Cover art by Emma Williams. YouTube help to Olivia Baldwin. Sorry, I spelled her name wrong. And then there's a link to Guinness if you want it. So we're going to get out of all this. And I'm going to say thanks and have a great night. And hope to see you soon. It was a little wacky to start with and a little wacky to end, so I apologize. Next time we are going to look at modern chivalry. Maybe an Anglican monarchical aristocratic party has sprung up by Thomas Jefferson, and possibly Washington's farewell address. That's really long, so maybe Washington's farewell address or something else. And we might look at some SCOTUS decisions or something along those lines. So again, I hope you enjoyed it, and we will talk to you soon.